One of the most asked questions that I get on consultation calls with new authors is for them to want to know the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing in terms of what's involved, what it takes to do each of those, what the royalties would be, what the difference is between those royalties. So that's a question I get asked so much. I was like, you know what? My group's going to need this question. So I want to answer that and dive into that for us today. Okay, you ready? Let's get started. We'll start with traditional publishing because that's what most people are going to be the most familiar with. Now, here are the pros, okay? Credibility, instant credibility when you have a traditional publisher on the title, okay? Because they really are that quality control in the industry. So that's one of the biggest pros that you get from traditional publishing. They also will have distribution power. They can get into places that some indie authors might not be able to get into. However, the industry is really changing, and some indie authors now have brand recognition that's allowing them into those places as well. There's no upfront cost to the author. Publishing is expensive, and somebody's got to pay for all of that professional effort that's going into these books. But a traditional publisher will be the one who fronts those costs and then recoups them with royalties on the back end. And you have access to a professional team that the publisher has put together. Editors, designers, marketers, they're going to polish and promote your book. Now, there's cons. You're going to see this with self-publishing as well, okay? But let's start, like I said, with that traditional publishing we're talking about. First of all, it is a lengthy process. Traditionally published books take minimum of a year. Usually it's going to go over that. Usually 18 months is what you're looking at from signing the deal to holding the book in your hands and it being out on the shelves. You're going to have less control. The traditional publisher is going to have final say over cover, title, content. That's going to limit your creative freedom. You're agreeing to that up front. You're going to have lower royalties, usually somewhere around 10 to 15% per book if you get a good deal. So those are going to be some things to think about. Also, especially for the top 5, but even smaller presses now will require a literary agent. And the literary agent, similar to a publisher, might not ask for anything up front, but they're going to take pieces of the royalties on the back end. So then you're looking at giving even more of those royalties away. Not because they don't earn it, not because they don't deserve it, but because that's how they're paid. They're not paid by you signing a contract and handing them money. They're paid by how well your book does. That has benefits in and of itself. So, what are the pros and cons of self-publishing? Because you might think, hey, with some of those cons and lower royalties like that, I absolutely want to do self-publishing. Let's start talking about the pros first. First of all, full creative control. You get to decide on every element, the title, the cover, the content. You pick it all. But there's a con. You have full creative control of every element, which means if you don't pick correctly, it could drastically impact the marketability and therefore the sales of your book. So sometimes having somebody who's going to tell you no is not always a bad thing. You do get much higher royalties. In fact, places like Amazon Kindle Direct, some of the options you can pick will give you royalties of up to 70%. So you will get higher royalties. But those higher royalties come with a flip side of that you're paying those upfront costs of professional editing, professional cover design, formatting, all of those things. So putting it up on Amazon KDP might be free, but there should be, for a really quality product, some professional attention to different details before it's posted. It's a faster timeline because you're controlling the timeline. And so there will be things you can do and speed up because you're not waiting for a team in New York or California or Oregon. You are actually making the decisions, and you can work at 1 a.m. in the morning if your schedule allows it. And you have the opportunity for direct audience connection. Self-publishing allows for that more direct connection. You can build a brand and a voice and an audience with self-publishing that typically is expected to already exist with traditional publishing methods. Now, like I said, there's some cons. We've already talked a little bit about those, such as there are upfront costs. You are in charge of quality control. So if you want it done well, you're going to need to decide what pieces of this project you can do at the same quality level of a traditionally published book, and what pieces, in all honesty, you really can't. And get that professional help. One of the biggest ones is editing. It needs to be professionally edited. The work that you do might be spectacular, but even the best authors hire professional editors. Good authors are good editors, but not necessarily of our own work. We should be doing self-editing, but we need someone else to be looking at that, seeing our holes, seeing our blind spots, helping us with that process. And as we mentioned before, there may be some distribution limits, especially if you're a first-time author. There might be places that are more challenging to get into. There's ways around it, but they might be more challenging to get into than if you were a traditionally published author. And that's because of the ways that libraries, bookstores buy books. There are rules that they have in place on how they buy books. And so you have to know what those rules are so that you can follow them. And again, marketing your book. If it's your book and you're self-publishing, you're the publishing company. That means it's your job to market and sell it. And if you're not marketing it and selling it, guess what? It's going to sell to your mama and your auntie, and that's it. Now, that may be exactly the audience you wrote that book for. Yay, amen, congratulations. That's not a bad thing. But you have to know what your goals are to be able to put into place the right steps. Now, can you absolutely market and sell your own self-published book? Yes, there are indie authors who make a complete living full-time writing, marketing, and selling their own works. It's absolutely doable. You just want to know up front that that's going to be an expectation and that you're ready to jump in and you're ready to learn what all that's going to take. So then you might say, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. I don't want to market. I don't want to sell. I want to write. That's all I want to do. And so therefore you will pick that traditional publishing model. Guess what? One of the first things that traditional publisher is going to say is, what's your audience? How do you market? How can you help us at these events? Because there is going to be an expectation that even though they have a team that's going to help you along the way and produce marketing content for you, they're wanting your help. And they're going to expect you to leverage your platform, maybe even have a platform already, in order to truly generate sales, because they've got costs that they've put out for you that they need to recoup. So just be aware that picking that traditional publisher so you don't have to market or sell is not actually reality, okay? Again, just your book doula here telling you how it's going to really be. Also, you're going to hear two big buzzwords in the industry that might either excite you or scare you. The first one is you're going to hear about hybrid publishers and the scary side, which would be vanity publishers. Hybrid publishers will work with you. They will do pieces of the process for you. You're contracting with them. Usually you're paying them up front to do pieces for you that you don't feel comfortable with, but they're the ones with the team and they're the ones that are going to put out the book. Some will allow you to keep your royalties, keep your copyright. Some will ask for a percentage of that as part of the package. Again, make sure you have a lawyer. Read all the legal content. You don't want to be signing contracts that you're not fully aware of what you're signing. Okay, that's just suggestion here. It's not any sort of legal advice. I'm not a lawyer, but I would never sign a contract that you haven't read. That's what I'm saying. That's just wisdom right there. And in that, you're going to hear a lot of people very scared of the idea of paying someone up front. That's not a bad thing. But there are a lot of companies, there's entire watch lists of companies that they're not going to give you what you're paying for. And so that's why people get so worried about these scams, because they're scams, where they claim that they're going to do this one thing for these authors. The authors pay a lot of these upfront costs that the traditional publisher would typically have paid for keeping the rights, keeping the royalties, and then that's not what ends up happening. So again, I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important to make sure you have done your research on the companies, you know who you're talking to, you read the contracts, even better yet, you have a lawyer who's looking at these contracts with you, because this is a business. You're writing a book, and that is hugely important. And so if you are going to be doing these things, you're going to need to make sure that you have those safeguards in place. Okay? Now, if that all seems so overwhelming, don't worry, because there is solutions. There are people like me. There's many of us out there who our goal in life is to help make sure that you walk through this process well informed, coming out the other side with the product you want and knowing how to do what you need to do with it. Okay? So look for someone who is that book doula who can help you step by step of the way. In fact, that's why I call myself that. That's the name God gave to me one night at a conference, which is very similar to a birth doula. Anybody ever heard of a doula in birth? Okay, so this is a wonderful person whose main job is to help advocate for the mom, right? They're not the mother. They're not the one giving birth. I'm not the writer. I'm not the one writing your book. But they are helping the mother give birth. They're also not the doctor. Or in this scenario, they're not the publisher. They're not publishing the book. You're doing that. But they're telling you, here's what you should expect at every point, every step. Have you done this? Have you done that? That is what a book doula can help you do. So don't get overwhelmed. Stay in that sense of confidence and that I don't have to know the how. All I have to know is where I want to be. All I have to do is have the goal in mind. The how will come as I take steps forward. I would love to talk to you to figure out what your exact goal is and to see if there's even a possibility that I might be able to be the one that could help you with that. I hope you reach out. I would love to visit with you more. Talk to you soon. Okay, bye.